I'm gonna do like a little clap, so you know when. Obviously, so the second clap, you're gonna know when we start. So, all right. So, hi, ladies and gentlemen. This is Interviews with Everyday People. One of your hosts here, Anthony Blackwell, alongside Nikolai Cabana. We are talking to our friend of ours, Scotty McCoy, today. He's an author. He wrote a book. He has 3 books actually, but he wrote a book on some of the struggles and journeys that he went through as a family with his father. This book did receive an award, or was on a New York Times
bestsellers.
New York Times bestseller. So what exactly? Just as curiosity to me, what exactly does what's the criteria or the requirements of getting that accolade?
So the main part is how many sales you have within a certain amount of time of initial publication.
Okay.
After 35 minutes of initial publication, I sold over $2,000 just after 35 minutes.
Oh wow!
So that was pretty much a given that this book is gonna do really well. So my publisher went to her boss at the publishing company, and they end up speaking with the New York Times bestsellers and Amazon. They all had this meeting, and they decided that independent books usually don't do that well with selling wise and in terms of making the New York Times bestseller. And they wanted to they figured the story hits a lot of people. It has 2 different titles, names in the title. They have cancer and they have Christ. People that are religious and people that are dealing with medical issues. And they figured this would be one of those books that is gonna do really well selling wise, and that's when they ended up deciding this deserves to make a New York Times bestsellers. Awesome. Now it was published last November, so and it didn't get on this list until this past June, so it took quite a few months for it to get there.
Okay, so this book's coming up just hit a year old, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Awesome. Now, when you were going through that process and writing and going through that, how many books have you hit so far sold?
As of today?
Is that something you can track?
I didn't keep track. I do have it on my intranet, but I do know I made roughly over $8,000 total within the year.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So yes. a year old, you've done enough to get those accolades. So that's really cool. So yeah, and we will have in the description links and stuff if you're interested in the book. We're going to talk about some of it, not all of it, obviously, because people want to still read it. Right. Obviously, words and writing are two different ball games. And we're movie fans, watch any Stephen King movie, right? So we're gonna get into that a little bit. So it's kind of a story based on actually you take us through. What does this book for the most part cover?
So for the most part, my family alone we're Christians, and we believe in our faith. And when this all happened with my dad being diagnosed with brain cancer, and determining what type of cancer it is, that it's incurable, and that the lifespan is 2 years and all that stuff, it's like we as Christians believe that Jesus would heal him. And when my dad had setbacks, especially after the surgery, it was more of our faith, us relying on faith. And at the time, I was a Christian, but I wasn't as strong of a Christian. I didn't have the strong faith. I more focused on medical aspects. They're saying he's not going to survive the stroke he had. And then I'm now I'm going to lose my dad. And then 2 years later, he's still here and cancer free. Yeah. So it's one of those things that my faith was really enhanced, and that's what it goes into. It goes into our faith as a family, how we as a family got through it together, and how we made comedy and get-togethers in a hospital waiting room as a family, a good experience given the circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what is the name of the cancer that your dad was diagnosed with?
It's called stage 4 glioblastoma. It has a fancier name, it's glioblastoma multiforme or something like that, but it's the given name is glioblastoma. It's stage 4. It's a terminal cancer that usually has a lifespan of no longer than 2 years. And there's other treatments that my dad's guinea pig testing, and they actually work and everything. But it's a cancer that the doctors are shocked that he's still cancer free after 2 years.
Awesome. That's really cool. Now, before we get into obviously the story of the book and stuff, what was your relationship with your father and your relationship as a family before all this went down?
It was good. Like me and my dad were always close, which my mom always says that is the reason why me and my dad tend to have a little bit of tiffs and fight a lot, and that is because we're very close. We're pretty much the same person. I mean, we have the same first name for obviously. So I mean,
are you a junior?
I am a junior, but that's why I go by Scotty. Yeah. But we were really close, and we always went to wrestling events together. Like went to WrestleMania together, and we went to like all these pay-per-views and wrestling event, like Raws and everything together. And we went like we just are really close to each other. We like a lot of the same TV shows. We have that in common. We spend time on all that. And it was funny because when he was like a month before he was diagnosed, we had a little fight, and it's in the book. But we had a little fight, and I thought like when my dad was diagnosed and he was going into brain surgery, I was like, I never really said I'm sorry because it was like a little tiff type thing at a family reunion, and it was like, well, I mean, what's the harm of that, And then when all this happens and you're basically told that your dad is getting brain surgery and all this, that, and the other can happen, he has this type of cancer, it's like, wow, like that little fight seems bigger than it actually is, because like, am I gonna actually apologize to him? Like, is he gonna do it? Does he really forgive me? Is he mad at me still? Like that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, what did your dad do like for a living before this all went down?
He worked at the SCI Frackville. He was a head supervisor at the in the kitchen. He did that for a good, I say, 20 years. And maybe longer. He worked there since he was like 18, 19 years old, and he retired a couple years prior to being diagnosed, and he retired in his early 50s. He kept his pension. He had a good pension.
So he was retired benefits. Once he was diagnosed?
Yes.
Okay.
And he was also a Scoutmaster. He recently stepped down of being a Scoutmaster of our Boy Scout troop. He did that ever since I was like 8 years old. Okay. He had to step down because of it being too much on him with everything that he's been going through lately.
Now, personality-wise, what type of person was your father before this?
I guess he has the same personality as a lot of our family. Like, he has that corny, jokey type, I guess, personality. He always makes jokes, and they're always the corny type of jokes that is like when you hear it's jokes?
Like dad jokes?
Pretty much.
Dad jokes?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Awesome. Like, he like my uncle made a joke about, he thought when Justin Bieber wasn't really known, and he was on New Year's Eve, and he would say, like, he thought he said Justin Bieber when they announced him, like, give him a hunk of wood. And like that's kind of what my dad would say. Or like the Spice Girls, like, what's their name? Cinnamon, oregano, onion, basil, that type of thing. So, yeah, like those corny type of jokes.
So, take us to kind of we'll slowly slide in. You said you had a fight with your father.
Yes.
Prior. What sparked this?
So it was really hot out, and the family reunion was outside at like a campground in Pottsville, and we were going to meet Damien Sandow, I believe. Was it the next day? Yeah, it was the next day, that morning in Allentown. And it was funny because it was really hot, and I felt like I was getting weaker, and I was getting like really overheated, and like I actually felt it, like my head was burning up that bad. And I told my dad I need to go because I'm not feeling good, and my dad thought I was just over exaggerating. I'm the type of person that likes to stay indoors, so it's like he doesn't want to be outside, he doesn't want to be here, and so like we kind of argued about that, and then we ended up leaving like when we were originally gonna leave, and then that next morning I was gonna meet Damien Sandow, and I had to cancel because I was really sick. Like it seemed like I had heat stroke. I was so sick I couldn't get out of bed. I felt like my head was on fire. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Like it was awful. And then when I got better, it was more of a like I could have met Damien Sandow if he listened to me. We left at this such a time type of scenario.
So it kind of. You walked away from a family reunion, and then obviously something that you would have bonded over, being a wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, in retrospect now of obviously everything that went down eventually, it seems very minor and minuscule, but those small things play a toll on you, and mentally when you're like, obviously when he could have never been there again, and that was the biggest thing. So take us through what happened coming into the aspect of when you found out that he was diagnosed, or what, like, was he starting to get weak? Like, lead us into that.
So it was started with minor things. Like he's always the type like to cut the grass and do this, like yard work, and he would put on his shoes, but he would have his underwear on, but he wouldn't have his pants on. And it's like, it started like that, like, cause his brain is playing these tricks, and it's like, oh, maybe he's just being goofy, or maybe he just didn't think before, he did something, that type of thing. And then, it led into more dangerous situations. Like we were going to Walmart, and we were fine going over there, and we were in Walmart. My dad would drop the pickles, like he literally dropped the pickles, and it's smashed everywhere. And my dad found me and my mom in the one aisle, and he goes, made like a joking comment, like he goes, "You're about to hear a cleanup in aisle 9. I dropped the pickles." Like, I thought he was like joking, like he dropped them, so he made a joke out of it to make it into a humorous situation. But then the drive home was he ended up going through a red light, And that's not like him. My dad would never go through a red light. So I go to my dad. I'm like, Dad, why did you go through that red light? I'm like, do you think the cops are gonna like pull us over? So he's like, well, we're about to find out in like 5 seconds if they put their lights on. It's like, that's not my dad. Like me and my mom looked at each other, and I'm like, Dad, pull over, and I had to drive home. Like it was one of those situations that my dad would never make a joke like that, and it was like his brain was not making him himself. So
it changes personality. Exactly.
So we ended up calling my uncle. My uncle did a neurological exam. No, first we took him to the Shamokin Hospital, and my dad used to do landscaping after he retired for the state with the people that he retired with. And we thought that he had a tick bite, like so Lyme disease, because that can give the side effects of the brain type of thing. And here we took him to the hospital, and they diagnosed him with dehydration, let him go. And they didn't do any tests or anything. Just he had dehydration, let him go. So we were all happy. I was all happy and everything, and because I was like, oh, maybe it's not major. Maybe it's just that dehydrated. So they gave him fluids, and we went home. And then my uncle, he's a PA, physician assistant. He was like, he did not agree with that. He knew it was more something neurological. So he went home. He did some research on tests he can do for neurology without actually using machines.
Okay.
So he did it on me and my mom first. It's like, I guess what he would do is you would get his finger and he would like wipe the top of your bottom of your foot or whatever, and your foot would like make a kick type of situation, and me and my mom would do that, but my dad's foot stayed still, so he knew it was something in the neurology.
Is now, just because we're friends on social media and stuff, and I seen some of the videos you posted, you do a lot of exercises where he has to like touch his nose and like kind of like touch your hands or punch your hands. So is that kind of things that he wasn't able to do at that time? Or?
No, he has to do that now because of the stroke he had. It's like his physical therapy to get his left side stronger, and he has to, in order to get his left side stronger, he has to also do the right side. Like they have to coordinate each other. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
Now, going into that, and when he would have those hiccups and have those little steps where he wasn't himself, would he ever come to it and like, why did I do that? Was he aware of the situations, or was he?
I think he was, but he doesn't like going to the hospital or the doctors, and it was one of those things that he didn't want to go. So when we found out that it was more neurological, my uncle talked to me and my mom about it. And we ended up telling him, like the whole family came up, and we said, you're going to go back to the hospital because something's going on in your brain. And he's like, I'm not going. So I got my phone out. I said, I got 911 dialed. They said, all you got to do is go with us, or the ambulance is taking you. Either way, you're going to the hospital. And he's like, fine, I'll go back. So we went back to the hospital, and me and my uncle went up to the nurse and the doctor, and we said, last time he was here, he was diagnosed with dehydration. And I actually said this time, like, this is unacceptable. My dad has neurological problems, and you didn't even give him a CAT scan to see what's going on. We demand that you give him a CAT scan, because if you don't and something happens to my father, I'm suing Geisinger for everything you have. And they ended up doing it. Yeah.
No. Okay, go ahead.
So when they originally said, it was just dehydration, did you guys notice that it all kind of, like, his behavior changed at once, or was it like a span with little things here and there, and
it grew? And even the doctor told us, the neurosurgeon, he said that this cancer grows slowly. It's a fast growing cancer, aggressive, but it grows slowly, gradually over time.
I guess what I mean, from the point that you guys started noticing stuff versus when they said, oh, it's dehydration, like, was it a span of time that it couldn't have actually have been that, because he would have had to rehydrated himself at some point.
Yeah, that is a good point. We didn't. I never thought of that actually, but that's a good point, because but once my uncle did the exam, my uncle knew it wasn't dehydration right from the beginning, because he's a PA, so he knows the medical stuff. So once they let him go, he's like, fine, we'll let him go, but I'm gonna research this some more. And he thought it was more of a mini stroke or Lyme disease. That's what he kind of figured it was. So he did the neurological test, and it was something with his brain. He knew it was a mini stroke, but it was obviously a lot more than a mini stroke. But obviously you need that type of, you need the CAT scan to kind of pick that type of stuff up, and that's where we saw the size of the tumor was the size of a man's fist. And it was pretty big.
In his brain. Wow.
Yeah.
Now you were saying how he was having issues dressing himself, and the Walmart incident. Yeah. Were they in the same span, or was that like a week span? Like, I'm just trying to put a timeline of.
Probably within a couple days, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. So there was a couple day span there where it got to the point where, like, you're like, oh, this is definitely noticeable. Personality has changed. Him as a person was changing.
Yep. I would say, because the family reunion was the beginning of August, and after the family reunion, we went on a day trip to Washington, D.C. with the Boy Scout troop. So I would have to say it was probably after Washington, D.C. is when he started the symptoms.
Okay.
Because he was fine at D.C. He knew where he was going. He knew what he wanted to do. But the driving part wasn't probably until, I would say, early September, late August.
Now, talking to him now in retrospect, does he ever recall when he felt like he was changing or anything like that?
He doesn't remember a lot of that stuff because of the stroke that he had and because of the tumor itself and the surgery. Like, a lot of damage was done to his brain. I mean, he's able to focus and function and talk properly in that, but a lot of damage was done to his brain that he doesn't remember a lot of stuff from 2016 when that all happened.
So if you were to had a gauge of where he is now, like what would, like, have you ever sat down and talked to him and had like a conversation, like where in your timeline do you recall from till now?
I never spoke to him about that, actually.
Okay.
It's something that I will bring up to him today, though.
I'm just interested. That's something that interests me, like, because your brain is such a important thing. Like that's literally your main computer, your motherboard. Like that communicates everything to everything else. So it's just interesting to see how, now that he's coming through and he is. We'll get to that in a little bit, but like where he stands now and if he remembers any of that, if you could shed light on it. But obviously you said it's not, you're not 100% sure.
Right.
All right. So he gets his CAT scan and they find this tumor.
Right.
That was the same day.
That was the day after the dehydration, and then he had the CAT scan, and then they came back with the results that he had the tumor, and it was the size of a man's fist. And then that night they immediately rushed him by ambulance to Geisinger and Danville, and they were going to do surgery that next morning.
Take us through that moment where the doctors walk in. So is it you, your father, and your mother sitting in the room?
And my Uncle Steve. We were all in that room when my dad was in the hospital bed.
What was the tone before you even realized that this was a thing? Like were you having a conversation in the room? Like
I asked my Uncle Steve, what do you think it is? Because we were waiting for the CAT scan results, and he said, I honestly think it's just a mini stroke. I don't think it's anything big. I don't think it's anything major. He said, but I'm in the medical field, but I don't know. Like, I don't have the machine, I don't have the technology to determine what it is, and I can't just look in his brain and see. But
and where was your dad mentally at this point?
He was at the, like, what do you mean, like...
Was he, like, I just don't want to be here? Was he fully aware? Was he...
He didn't want to be here, but he knew that something was wrong, so I think he was more scared but hiding it because he always hid his emotions. Like, even when my Grammy died, he was the type of person that he wouldn't cry in front of people. Like, he would more of, like, just keep to himself.
So just as a personality, I'm just trying to gauge of what a type of person your father would be. Like, so he was the type of person, if something was going wrong with the family or something emotional or a loss or a family loss, he pretty much would take care of his emotions probably on his own time.
Yes,
and make sure everyone else is okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So and going into this, your father, obviously he's retired. So is your mother working at that time? Or
she was working, yes. When the whole diagnosis and all that happened, she actually retired. She was working as a special education teacher in school. Okay. So she retired after this this went down too. Yeah.
All right, I'm just trying to gauge because a lot of these medical things, it changes not only your from a family standpoint, doesn't change the dynamic of relationships, but financially and who has to then become the breadwinner, who has to take up that slack, because that's what I was trying to find out, like where he stood, like if he was the breadwinner, if he had to go to work every day, and now this changes that. That's where I'm kind of gauging there. So all right, so the results come in, the doctor walks in the door. Does the doctor immediately, like, is he like, does he have a look on his face?
He told us right straight up bluntly what was going on. He didn't want to hold anything back. He couldn't tell us it was cancer. He couldn't tell us what type of cancer because he needed an MRI for that. That's when they took him to Geisinger, and they did that morning or that night in the middle of the night. But when he came in, and he told us it was a tumor, it was shocking. Like, my
mom. Did he like show you the photo of it?
No, he just told us everything that was going down.
Okay.
Once he said he has a tumor in his brain, and it was the size of a man's fist. Right when he said tumor, I broke down. I was screaming, crying, carrying on. I went right into my uncle's arms. I didn't know what to think. My mom, she was I guess more shocked. She wasn't crying. She was just speechless, stunned. Yeah. Like she was in a trance. Like she couldn't believe what she was hearing right now.
Yeah.
And my dad, the look on his face was really, this is really happening. This is what became my life right now. Because my dad was Mr. Independent. I want to do everything on my own. I want to do things for other people. I don't care. And then I was like, I might not be able to do that because now I'm dealing with this.
Yeah. That's crazy. So now you have the results, and then you said did they transport him, or did you transport him to the next hospital?
They had to do it by ambulance. So my mom went in with him to the hospital, like in the ambulance to go to Geisinger, and I went with my Uncle Steve. We followed up, and me and my uncle were just like praying, and I was like crying so hard, like I couldn't stop crying. It was like probably
you're losing your best friend at that
exactly.
point in your mind state.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so you just get to Danville, and they immediately start surgery, or
no? They did an MRI in the middle of the night. Me and my mom were up all night by my dad's bedside, praying, talking, because my dad was kind of out of it because they had him on meds to make him comfy. Around 3-4 in the morning, they took him for an MRI, and they wouldn't give us the results back until like the doctor came in around 6 a.m. We were up all night, so when he came back, the nurse got us, and we stayed by his bedside. The doctor came in around 6 a.m. Told us that it was cancerous. Told us it told us what it was, glioblastoma, the stage 4, and they said that they're going to do emergency surgery within the next couple of hours, call our family to come up if we want. So it's funny, for those who know Geisinger, the main waiting room in on the first floor, there's like about 50 chairs or so there. Every chair was picked, was filled with family and friends. Like, it was crazy. And then,
so you leave, just sorry to cut you off. So you leave, you go to the first hospital, Good Sam? Shamokin.
Yes.
So you get there at what time?
That about, I'd say 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock.
At night?
At night, yeah.
And then you are now, from that, you are driving to Danville.
Yes.
And then you are now getting the results of the MRI.
That would be that morning we got the results.
There was really, you spent the night, like the whole night was in hospitals and that. So now you have the results. It's at 6 in the morning. Now it's 6 in the morning and they're taking him into surgery.
Right.
Okay.
They took him, actually surgery started around 12 noon, but they wanted to give us time to get our family up here, and they had a prep and everything like that. Because it was an emergency situation. It was emergency surgery. It wasn't like a planned surgery. So
they take him into surgery. What was like? I don't know if you obviously you weren't in the room as a surgeon, but when the doctors came out, what did they tell you that went down in that surgery?
My dad actually remembers some of it, not the surgery itself, but he said that he saw like heavenly gold dust coming above him, and he saw like flashes before his eyes, like he thought he was going to die. And then he said that he saw that like a field with me and my mom, and like we were there like waving at him, and and then he ended up doing it was all like heavenly stuff. He said it was like he was at peace. But then he didn't see God, he didn't see Jesus or anything. All he saw was like a bright light in front of him, and then he woke up, and it was like it wasn't his time. His time wasn't up. And the surgeon came, and this is the funny part, because my Aunt Luann and my Aunt Leslie, of course, leave it to them too while we're waiting for 8 hours of surgery day, going on down. They're shopping in the gift shop.
Yeah.
And the doctor's there, he's like, is everybody here? And I'm like, oh, Luann and Leslie's not here. And they're like, go get them, Scotty. So I get them. I never seen my aunts run so fast in their entire life.
What did the medical wise, what did they do during the surgery?
They had to remove the whole tumor. They weren't able to get all of it because this type of cancer, the tumor itself wouldn't be able to be completely gone.
Okay. Did they have to go through the back, or?
I'm not really sure about that. All he said was they were going to give him a pretty bad haircut, and they were pretty much going to cut open his scalp. That's all they told us.
Like, where was, like, does he have a scar? Like,
he had a scar, like, right up in here, I would say.
So they went through the side?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, did he immediately come out of surgery? What was his recovery through that, after that surgery?
So they put him in his regular room, but we weren't allowed to see him for a couple hours. And then after we were able to see him, like the doctor told us, they removed 95 to 98% of the tumor.
And you said it was the size of a fist.
It was the size of a man's fist, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty big. He said it was the neurosurgeon who actually wrote the foreword of the book. I'm going to plug that out. He said that it was probably, he was working as a neurologist and a neurosurgeon for roughly 29 years. Maybe a little longer than that, and he said he never saw a tumor in the brain bigger than that. He said that was the biggest he's ever saw, to the point that he needed to get my dad's permission to do research on this tumor, because they're getting kind of close to different cures for this tumor, like actually curing it. Oh, wow. And they figured my dad's tumor and mass would be enough to get them a little farther in their research.
So, from a medical perspective, did they give you a timeline on how fast this thing grew, or is it something that's been in there for a long time?
He said that it's a very quick growing tumor, but it took over the course of a month to grow to that size, because it was so big.
It is that fast growing.
Yes.
That's
yes.
It's crazy.
It's a rare aggressive form of brain cancer. Yeah, it's the most common brain cancer, but it's a very rare type of cancer, very aggressive.
So
yeah,
realistically, he goes home with that diagnosis of dehydration, and kind of just goes through it because I could definitely relate. I'm the type of person, if I have a cold, I'm not going to a doctor. I just don't do it.
Right.
Like I always joke around, like I'll probably be gone by the time I'm 45, 50, because I'll have something that could have been taken care of with a pill, and I won't take it, and that'll be the end of me. So I could definitely relate to your dad. Like it's really good that you guys went through that process and said, hey, like we're taking you to the hospital. You have no choice. Da da da. Like you know what I mean. So realistically, if he would have waited another month, if it already
he wouldn't have waited another month, he would have been dead. The doctor said based on the size of the tumor, he would have been dead in 2 weeks.
Really?
In 2 weeks, if we did not take him to the hospital when we did, we would have found him on the couch and he would have been dead because he would not have woken up.
So that's how quick
That's how quick
he had no time. He had no window.
No, not at all. Once if we literally weren't gonna do anything about it at first because we didn't think until he was acting all strange and all this, that, and the other. And then it was funny because when my dad was doing landscaping work, the guy that he retired with, he was like the head guy that did it. He called my mom and said, you better take him to the hospital. And he used to be a registered nurse, and he said he's not acting himself. He's literally stumbling. He's not doing his job the way he always did it.
Is that when that's that time frame you were talking about? He wasn't trusting himself, and he was driving the.
That's exactly the same day we took him to the first time. Took him to the hospital for dehydration. Yes.
And that wasn't after the trip to Walmart.
That was after the trip. Yes, that was the day we took him to the hospital. He was diagnosed with dehydration because the next night we took him back to the hospital, and that's when he was, gave him the tumor diagnosis.
All right, so if I'm going too deep in the book and you don't want to go over, that's fine. I don't want to give everything away because obviously, if we do talk about a lot in the book, then please, definitely look into the book, read it, give him some help here with that. So. He's out of surgery. He now does he come to after surgery? Like is he talking, motor skills, the whole nine?
He was fine. He was making jokes. He had this thing on his, the thing on your finger that's like got a red light, and he would like
the heart rate monitor. Yes.
And he would make I told you corny jokes. He would say ET phone home. Like he would make jokes like that. It was hilarious.
Immediately after getting it fixed out of his
head. But
then
the next day he was out of it. His arm was twitching, his arm was shaking, his lip was drooping. I noticed something was wrong. We all noticed something was wrong. The doctor said he would have good days and bad days because he just had major surgery. I noticed fast, which was face, arm, face, arm, speech, and time. And I went to the nurse and I said, my dad is showing symptoms of a stroke. I know all this stuff because I was a Boy Scout. I was certified in CPR, first aid, and AED. I know all this stuff. So I said, I think my dad needs to get another MRI because something's not right in the brain and I can tell something's going on. She's like, oh, he's just having a bad day. Like, no, he'll be better probably later. I said, I'm his son. I'm on his medical card. I demand as his son to give him an MRI, and if you don't, I'm going to go to your boss. And they said to me, fine, we'll call somebody to get him up. They gave him an MRI. He had a stroke. That's when he had a stroke. And
so he had a stroke during the recovery.
2 days after he was done surgery, he had a stroke.
Okay, so all right. So I'm just going timeline. So we left the hospital. Now we're in another hospital. At any point in time, were you able to go? Like at one point, do you say, okay, we're going home, and then come back? Like how did that process go?
The doctor said that he was gonna be, for the most part, in the hospital for roughly a week or so. I would say, because just the whole surgery part of things. It wasn't like one of those outpatient surgeries. It's like he had to stay in there for at least a week or so. But when he had this, 2 days after he was given a stroke diagnosis, because they did the MRI, and then they said they were gonna do another surgery on him to alleviate the swelling. And when they did it was, I think that was on Friday or something like that, or something, I don't remember, but it was like one of those near the weekend, because it was Saturday because the doctor wasn't in, and then they had to do the surgery Monday morning, and then Sunday my uncle had a vision that Jesus put his hand in my dad's brain, stopped the brain bleed. And my dad was only given 24 hours to live. They said he wasn't going to survive to begin with. After the stroke. They said he wasn't going to survive because he slipped into a coma. And here what happened was my uncle had that vision of Jesus putting his hands and pinching that brain bleed, stopping the bleed. And I thought that my uncle was just, being hopeful, seeing visions type of thing. Like my faith was getting stronger because he survived the surgery, but it's like, now he had a stroke. How much am I supposed to go through here, to have faith? So just to put a little more detail into that, because I'm very detail oriented. So he comes out of the surgery, he's conscious, he's making jokes, he's himself. And then, so 2 days, roughly, so he comes out. About when how fast did the stroke happen? So the surgery was on the 15th because he was diagnosed on the 14th. So he had surgery on the 15th, and then the 16th he was fine making jokes. The 17th was when he had the stroke. Yes.
Now, was he able to communicate with you like, I don't feel well, like something's wrong, like my arms bothering me?
He couldn't talk. His lip was droopy. He could barely speak.
So he went from making jokes to almost completely
out of it. Yeah, completely out of it. His arm was twitching. He couldn't even tell my mom that his arm was bothering him, that it was twitching like that. So he would get his right arm and move it over to the left arm so he can let her know that I want this to stop.
Now, going back to that again, have you ever had a conversation with him with that part? Like, do you remember the stroke at all?
He doesn't remember it at all. He said even when he was in the coma, he doesn't remember anybody visiting him. He doesn't remember anything at all.
Now, was he in a full, like, out coma, or was he, like, did he look like he was there, or was he, like, look like he was sleeping during this coma time?
He was awake every now and again, like he would come in and out of it, but it was the point that they said he wasn't going to survive it because it was that much damage to his brain.
So they found a stroke, and then you said a brain bleed?
Yes.
So the recovery from the surgery didn't go as well as planned.
Exactly. What happened was
swelling, bleeding on the brain.
The doctor told us that when they did the surgery, they removed between 95 and 98% of the tumor, but a lot of this tumor that was within the blood vessels of that part of the brain. And when they did it, they didn't realize that they cut some of the blood vessel, and they obviously it was a small cut because it took 2 days for it to actually cause the stroke.
Okay.
Yeah. Or the bleed or whatever it is. Yeah.
So with the stroke, was there any permanent damage that happened that he still hasn't recovered from?
Yes. I don't know if you've seen my post on Facebook, but he had to get, first of all, like when he first had it, he had to get the physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. Now we have an in-home physical therapist come once a week, and she can only come till December 1st, and we're debating putting him in and we're probably going to put him in a nursing home for 30 days for physical therapy every day, because he actually has to use a walker because he's not able to walk because of the swelling that his brain gets. Back in July of this year, he had and this isn't in the book because the book was obviously released in November. I'm actually writing a follow-up to this book, which we'll get into later. But he couldn't walk, he was at Boy Scout camp or whatever, and he just lost feeling in his left leg, completely. He only had his right leg, and then him and my mom, my aunt and uncle went up to the casino in Bethlehem, and he ended up he was unable to they were going to Cracker Barrel, and he completely collapsed. He was conscious, but he collapsed because both of his legs lost complete feeling. Wow. We took him right to the hospital, MRI, and his brain was completely swelling. His tumor was regrowing. So they ended up finding out there's a new treatment called Avastin out there that they give for this type of cancer, and they started him on it. And then this past October, he had another treatment. And he's able to walk again now with a walker because he was put back into rehabilitation, and he's able to walk, but he's very slow now with walking. But they said that with PT he's able to get it back to being stronger. But with this past MRI, the Avastin treatment completely took down the swelling, which is why he's able to walk again. And his tumor went from white, which means growing, to pink, which means decreasing, and instead of it being bigger, it's a very small like pebble now in his brain. So, and it's funny because this month on Thanksgiving will mark 2 years that he's been announced cancer free.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did it, like you said, it started to grow? Did it start a new area of growth, or was it just from those leftover pieces that they couldn't necessarily
It started at that part, and then in the MRI it showed that it was shifting to the other side of the brain.
Okay.
But now during this most recent MRI at the end of October, that part that shifted is gone, and now it's back in its original spot, and it's a small pebble, because this tumor will never go away unless they come out with a cure. Like other cancers, you're able to remove all of the tumor, but with this type of brain cancer, the remaining cells will always be there. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I know we kind of jumped a little bit ahead with some stuff. So he gets a stroke. He goes through. Your uncle has this vision where he was cured, or not cured, but
the stroke was gone.
The stroke was gone. Yes. So he comes 100% from the stroke. His feeling in his face, his arm.
So the next morning, after my uncle's vision, they did another MRI so the doctor could see if it declined, if it got any bigger, so they knew exactly what they had to do for surgery wise. And when he got the MRI results back, he comes into us and he looks at us. He's like, "I don't know what's going on here." We're like, "Oh no, what's going on?" We're kind of nervous. He's like, he looks at my mom and goes, "Your husband," and he looks at me and goes, "And your father is a miracle. I don't know how to explain this, but he's out of his coma, and this MRI that I'm looking at now that we just took shows no signs of a stroke, complete no signs of a stroke compared to the other one that he's physically looking at showing it. And on top of that, some of the cancer cells lit up on the previous MRI was not lit up on this new MRI. He said it's like a miracle. But he had a stroke because his left side is completely, like, you know, incompatible to be used. Like, he needs the PT, the OT, the ST, and all that. But he had a stroke, but it's not showing in his brain. And my uncle's vision literally came true. That's where the title Christ Defeats Cancer comes into play, because that was literally a miracle. The doctor says science can't explain it, because right now my dad should be at least dead or on the operating table, you know, because they didn't even think he was going to make it within 24 hours, but he did.
So the blood clot, I guess the bleeding of the brain was occurring. That stopped bleeding.
Yes.
The swelling went down.
Yes.
And he then was able to recover from
Yes.
that.
He was able to talk. He had no slurred speech. His arm wasn't trembling anymore. He just had no feeling on his left side at all. Like, it was like all numb. And that's where, when he got the PT, the OT, and the speech therapy and all that, that would bring back the within time. And literally, he had the surgery on September 15th. On October 15th, like literally a month later, he came home from rehab, and he would have to get like outpatient rehab all the way through like the holidays.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the uncle that was a part of a lot of this, is that on his side of the family, your father's? Is that his brother, or is that your mother?
His brother-in-law. It's my mom's brother.
So it's your mom's brother.
Yeah.
Okay. And they were close this whole, like.
Oh, they've always been close. Yeah. And our whole family's close. Like, our whole family on both sides, the McCoys and the Sightsinger sides, we're all very close. Like, we've always been close ever since, like, I was born, that I can remember, and even prior to that.
So you have a very, very strong family.
Yes, very strong.
That's good.
Yeah.
So your dad's home. Now, when he's home, he had a lot of damage where he has memory loss and stuff like that. If you had to go from a 0 to a 100, where would you say he falls in that scale the day he comes home?
The day he came home, I'd say maybe a 60, only because and that's a big improvement too from what he was, but only because even though he had the PT and all that stuff, he was still doing outpatient rehab. He didn't finish radiation. Like, he was still going he was still going to radiation. He actually, I don't even think he started radiation yet, because the halfway point was like the day before Thanksgiving or something like that. And then on Thanksgiving, they called us saying that we don't usually work and do this type of stuff on the holidays, but we thought you would want something to be thankful for, and they told us that he's still going to finish radiation, which he finished on my birthday of that year, but he was cancer free on Thanksgiving, and they still wanted to finish it, and he didn't start chemo until January. So, like, he still had it was still like even though it was like he was doing a lot better, it was still the beginning process. And I wasn't going to be able to help or see him as often, because I just got offered a job like a couple of weeks later in Philadelphia, down by Philadelphia, for Computer Software Incorporated, where I worked as a software database engineer.
Okay. So is he walking at this point, or?
He was walking, but he needed assistance with a cane or a walker or something.
Now, did you have to make changes in your home? Like,
Yes.
he obviously couldn't go upstairs anymore.
Right.
So his bed now is down, like, in the living room area.
He always slept on the couch, because it was funny, because he always snored, and my mom couldn't sleep, so she like, I can't sleep when you're sleeping with me. So my dad's like, fine, I'll sleep on the couch. So he always slept on the couch anyways. Okay. And their bedroom is literally on the first floor anyway, so it kind of was beneficial.
Okay.
But we did have a step like that would go up one step and then down one step to go into the bathroom. We recently just got rid of that because of what's going on now, and we end up, it's all flat now. But we had like my uncle Kirk, a different uncle, he had to put railings in the bathroom so he could hold on to, so he doesn't fall, and on the banister going like from the step to the other step to the bathroom.
Now, without getting into too much detail, obviously, because I don't want to, but like use like everyday things that we take advantage for, like, you know, bathing yourself, using the bathroom, getting up and making food. Where does he fall in that at that point in time?
At that time, I would say probably a 55, 60 still. He couldn't like dress himself. He could put kind of like it was hard because he only had one working hand. Like, even though he had access to his left hand because of the PT and that, his hand ever since the stroke to this very day is still numb. Like, he still doesn't have any feeling back, and they don't think he'll ever get it back. Yeah. Briefly he was driving. Briefly he was cooking, and he still did cook, and he still does cook every now and again. But but it's hard because he only has one working hand now. Between like New Year's of 2017 and I'd say like maybe for a good better part of a year or so, he was at the point that he was able to like do everything, drive, cook, walk good. Like he was able to do all of that stuff on his own without any help or any assistance.
Yeah. Now, when he was at his lower points, would he ever show signs of frustration that because he couldn't do things on his own?
Yes. He was the type, like I told you, he never cried. When he had the surgery, the first time I saw him cry was in the hospital. And I saw him cry a lot after that because where the tumor was and the stroke was, it affected the emotional aspect part of his brain. Where the emotions
did it change his personality at all?
It didn't change really his personality, but it did change his emotions. Like he would cry a lot. He would get angry a lot more, especially right after it happened. He would yell at me for no reason, like scream at me for no reason. And then he would feel guilty right after and like start crying and apologizing. So it was like one of those things where like his emotions were at an all like in a like different type of mood swing type of thing. And it was funny because I forget what I was gonna say, but yeah, it was his moods, like it was back and forth. He was angry at one point, he was emotional at another. Like I told you, he didn't cry. He kept it all to himself during my grandma's funeral, which was his mom and all like family members' deaths. But at that point, he like when he had this done, it was a totally different Scott McCoy that I knew.
Yeah. Now, so we're at present day time where now he just had a recent development where he went back in and stuff was moving. I seen on social media and stuff that he's home again.
Yes.
And things are looking better. He's doing rehabilitation. He's able to move. He's getting function back. Where do you stand now when it comes to the medical side of things? Of like what are the next couple steps? You said now you're going to put him in a nursing home so he just a home for 30 days just so he can get more physical therapy.
Yes. What they'll do is they'll put him in like a separate room where he'll be staying, and all they'll do every day for 30 days will be PT to get him stronger, and only be for 30 days we can take him out during holidays or whatever.
So he's getting like Rocky workout montage
pretty much,
for 30 days.
Pretty much. And it's funny because he I was gonna say I forget what I was gonna say. Oh yeah, like he was getting OT, like they stopped coming. The PT's now coming until December 1st and all that. But yeah, he started a new therapy. He started, like I said, Avastin. He was doing that, and then now he's doing a new immunotherapy called Opdivo, and that was literally he's the first person in the state of Pennsylvania to try it. It's not even FDA approved. But it had shown signs of not helping this type of cancer. But then they did more tests with the Avastin, and it does help it. So like the Avastin shrinks the tumor, the Opdivo will grow the swelling of the brain. Together, it destroys the.
And that's what they're testing.
And that's what they're testing, and it is working.
And it is working.
It is working because his first MRI after his first treatment showed that he has a very small pebble of a brain, like pebble of the tumor in his brain, and it's white. I mean, it's pink now, which means it's a decrease, and there's no swelling in his brain.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I know there was other things that you're probably throwing on the table when it comes to treatment and stuff. I don't know much about it. I just kind of started looking into it myself because I was an article or something I was watching or reading where they're trying to look at stem cell researching.
Yes.
Where it's like, is that something that was offered? I know in our state I don't think it's something that they look at yet.
I don't think so, but I know there was a treatment that we saw about the Zika vaccine. I don't know if you remember the Zika virus outbreak. Well, the vaccine for the Zika virus is used as a cure now for this cancer. It's being tested. It was tested on over 100 mice. And I feel bad for the mice, even though I hate mice, because like they literally were like given glioblastoma through needles.
Yeah.
It was like I felt bad, kind of hearing that because like no, my dad went through, but they put that Zika vaccine in them when they had that the cancer, and it literally it cured. I think it was out of 100 mice. I think it cured 78 of them or 79 of them. Like of the cancer itself, like all the cells was gone. Like they say it's incurable, they were cured.
Yeah.
So, but my dad was talking to his new neurologist, Dr. Gatson, about it, and she told him that she's not a fan of it yet because it's not FDA approved, and there is a lot of bad side effects with it right now because it's still in the testing phase. She said when they keep testing it, they will eventually come out with something that like with this vaccine that she'll probably approve of.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, so we're kind of present day now. He's bouncing back. He's going through the necessary steps. We're at points where it's almost in remission. He's cancer free, 2 years in a couple days. Does he has he any expressed to you or your family of any like end goals that he wants to accomplish now that he's getting better, or something that he maybe wants to get back into, or anything like that?
Not really, but he did, like, it's funny because like he jokes about this, but is also serious at the same time, and he says, like, he goes, I know this cancer probably will kill me, and I don't know when it'll be, but I want to walk before I die. I want to walk up until the point that I'm going to die, because I don't want to be, using a walker and, barely being able to get to the bathroom without falling. Like, I want to walk before.
So his goal is he wants to
walk. He wants to drive. He wants to cook. He wants to do everything he could have done that seems small, because he even said, like, you take advantage of what your brain is capable of. He said, I didn't know it took my brain that much just to move one step, and it does. Your brain works overtime just to do one step, and we all walk how many steps a day? Like, just one of those steps, your brain works overload. And my dad's brain, because of all the damage it caused, the stroke and everything, like, it takes him extra hard. Like, it takes him probably, the bathroom is maybe not even 2 feet away. I would say maybe 3 feet away from where the living room is. Like, only like, it's like the living room, the kitchen, and the front room, which the bathroom is right there. And it probably is takes him about a good 10 minutes just to get there, and then another 10 minutes just to get back to the other room, because of how hard his brain is working to focus on it.
So what are some things now that you and your dad do to spend time together? Obviously, you can't do your Boy Scouts anymore.
Right.
You can't really go out and do stuff. He can't do his yard, his landscaping. What are some of the things that right now that make him happy that he enjoys doing?
Okay. Well, we did go to the Royal Rumble earlier this year, which is really fun. It's funny because he's like, oh, Scotty, he said, I'm hooked up to all these wires, because he's wearing this Optune device that kills, like, the dividing cancer cells, and it looks like he has all these wires hooked up. He's like, it looks like I'm wearing a bomb. Yeah. And he's like, I wonder if I'm able to get through with the security, because they have metal detectors. So he's like explaining.
Can you go into a regular seat, or do you have to go to like a handicap seat?
You can go to a regular seat, yeah. And it's funny because when he walked get up to the security, he was explaining to them, he's like, come on, sir, move along, sir. And then after he went through, he looks at me, he's like, I don't know what's worse, if they let me go through because it looks like I'm wearing a bomb, or if this arena hired lousy security. Because they didn't even care.
So one of the biggest things now that keeps him happy, what you're saying, and you guys bond over, is professional wrestling.
Yes, we watch pay-per-views every month. We have a couple of guys come over, and that we end up watching like the King of Queens or Seinfeld, Raymond, like, our sitcoms we like to watch.
Awesome.
Like right now it's the holiday season. My mom has her Christmas movies on 24/7, but and my dad does sleep a lot because his brain has been through a lot. So the side effects of the medicine is a lot. Like, he always wants to sleep. He gets weak and all that stuff. But we watch some TV together and like all that stuff. Like, if he needs me to do something outside, I'll do it, and he'll go out with me, and I'll do it for him, and he'll watch me, and like we'll just like kind of spend time together doing that.
How much of your duties around the house when it comes to chores and stuff has changed since your dad can no longer do it?
It changed a lot because I still don't really cook. I mean, I do every now and again, but like I don't do it a lot. But like I started doing laundry more and all that, but it was hard because even though I work as an online college professor, I still have a lot of work I got to do. Like, even though I'm working from home, I'm still working. Like, I have to do my job. So it's hard for me. Like, if my dad needs me to do something like the laundry or to clean up or do something or other, I'll be like, hey, he'll tell me the day before and say, can you make time in your schedule for this? And then I can plan my schedule accordingly. So if I'm grading, like, I can, grade for 2 hours, take a break, and then do what he needs me to do. And he always makes a joke because he's like, yeah, because he goes, I tell Scotty to do this, and he says I'm grading. There's 365 days of the year, and it feels like he's grading 364 of them.
Yeah. So if you can go in retrospect of what this whole process has taught you or shown you in a nutshell, how would you break it down? Hands down,
don't take life for granted. Life is short, because my dad, he's I think 56 now, and he was diagnosed when he was like 54. Yeah, 54. He was diagnosed roughly, and it's like, don't take life for granted, because like I said, I had a simple fight with my dad. I was mad. I didn't apologize because I thought it was bridge under, water under the bridge. It was petty. It was like stupid. It was just like a normal father-son fight, or just a light type of thing. And then this all happens, and it's like now I have a regret that I had a fight with my dad, and I couldn't even make up for it, even though it was small. It's like now is my dad still mad over it? Does he think I don't love him anymore? All these emotions come to your mind.
Yeah, you start overthinking everything because it's a very traumatic and big experience.
And I'm not gonna lie, this whole past 2 years have been hell. And it's not because of just what my dad went through and what my family's gone through, but I am actually literally afraid to go to sleep. I am honestly afraid to go to sleep every night because every night I have a nightmare of my dad dying. And I try not to tell him it because I don't want him to think I think that way. But almost every night, I have a horror-related nightmare, and it's not like, oh, I'm getting chased by Michael Myers type of, that something that would be kind of cool. It's like, a traumatic thing about my dad that it all varies. Like it's whether it could be something that is the tumor regrowing, or he's getting surgery again, or he's literally dying, or he's on his deathbed, or he did die, and I'm at his funeral. Like it's all these horrible.
Do you find yourself checking on him a lot?
I do. And even in the hospital, I would go. My mom was like, you don't have to keep checking on him, Scott. He's fine. And I would check on him every 5 minutes. Literally every 5 minutes on the dot, I would go and check on him.
Spraying for his nose.
Yeah. It's funny because my dad would be sleeping, and I would just stare at him, and he opens his eyes like, what are you looking at? And I'm making sure. Yeah, right. I'm making sure he's still breathing because it's one of those traumatic effects that I have on me. Like I want to make sure my dad's okay still, even though he's sleeping. And like I would hear him like his like foot move a little bit or something, like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
But it's like something that you don't think of, but it's like when you're told that your dad literally wouldn't have survived 2 weeks, another 2 weeks if
or if you didn't take him to the hospital that day.
Exactly. And it's like you now want to make sure that maybe because he gets an MRI every 2 months, so it's like he has an MRI every 2 months, but what happens if something happened like within those 2 months? And like my dad came up to us the other day, and he was laying I heard my mom crying, and I was downstairs, and my dad was laying on my mom. I'm like, oh, I get up, I'm like, what? I'm like, oh God, don't tell me my dad died. Like it was because my mom was just crying, and my dad was in her arms. And then I looked, and he said, Scotty, I'm dying. I think I'm dying. And he was just having a really bad day, really depressed, really down. He felt weak, but it was just a side effect of one of the medicines we found out. But he thought he was dying. He thought it was it, and he was thinking of when he was a kid, and he was thinking all this, that, and the other. And
his brain's probably playing a lot of
mind games and tricks on him. Yep, and it was one of those things like I was terrified, like I didn't know what to do. And I talked to my uncle, who was a PA. He says, Scotty, we saw the MRI of what it last showed. Your dad will not die with the tumor this big. The only way your dad is going to die is if he doesn't want to do any of the treatments, or the treatments stop working and the tumor gets to the point that it will explode in his brain and kill him. And his tumor is so small that he will not die from it. His mind was just playing games on him. He was just not, he was just thinking like this is it, because he's feeling weak. He was depressed. He was down. He's not feeling strong today. It happens. He's gonna have those days.
So for the most part, I mean, you're in a good spot as a family, as his health, but there's plenty more to go.
Plenty more, yes. And
this journey is just now getting started.
Pretty much. It's been 2 years, and we're literally starting over again. It's like every obstacle, every setback is like we're going backwards, but we're really going forward. But it's like it's always a journey. Like it's always one thing leading to another, and it's always starting a new, fresh start. Which is why I'm writing a sequel to Christ Defeats Cancer, because it's going to describe more about what glioblastoma is, what it does. I'm going to have my dad's current neurologist write the foreword to that one. It's going more into the religious and our religious aspects and the religion of like scriptures in the Bible, and that it's going to go into more of what my dad's what he went through. It has actually like in a sequel, it flashes back to the previous film. Well, this book is probably one of the few books out there that will flash back to the previous book. Like the book that chapter is actually called "Previously in Christ Defeats Cancer." So it's gonna summarize the entire book in like one chapter, and then it's gonna talk about his setbacks, what we're currently facing, all the way up to a present day. I don't know a release date because we're not going to because we're trying to add more juice into it. And my dad's like, "You're really happy that I'm having these setbacks, aren't you?" He said, "More info for your book." And I'm like
a new show on Netflix, the House on Hill, or Haunting on Hill House.
Yes.
So you are working on part 2.
Yes.
This book is currently for sale.
Yes.
You are also very passionate when it comes to horror movies and stuff. Is that something that you and your dad had a common interest on?
No, my parents absolutely hate horror movies.
They do?
Yes.
They can't stand. So what drove you into that that direction?
I was always a horror fan ever since I was 8 years old. And like I would be able to go back when Black Diamond was in Ashland. It was like one of those video rental places, and I was not old enough to buy Friday the 13th, but my parents bought me Friday the 13th Part 7. Like they would let me watch it then. Now they're stronger Christians and they don't believe I should watch them type of stuff. But I mean, I'm an adult, so I can type of thing. But they don't like them because of that, because of their belief system now. But they technically got me my first film, and then they would get me film after film after film, and it stuck with me ever since.
Yeah. So he also has 2 trivia books, a Michael Myers and a Jason.
Yes, it's the Ultimate Friday the 13th trivia book and the Ultimate Halloween trivia book, which also on this past Halloween I had the Ultimate Halloween trivia book 2nd edition published with the new 2018 film in. It has been published. It is for sale, and it also includes a added word search to the bonus chapter. It now ties the Friday the 13th book with the most trivia questions in any horror trivia book out there, with 1,300 questions.
Awesome. And you also I know this personally because we were helping you with it for a while, and we had some setbacks and everything. You were working on a film, like a little web series. I was going to play some character that was very similar to myself when it came to being snarky and funny. Nikolai was actually helping with it as well. But yeah, so we had some setbacks and some fall throughs. And one of the things I did say to you is don't end this, because you are very clever, you're very writing. So you're actually turning that web series into a book now, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
So I don't want to give too much about it away, because we could be here all day.
Right.
But he is writing a book. It's a cool idea. It's a cool story. It's been tweaked a lot.
Yes.
Nikolai spent a good 3-4 hours on the first one, and then I came in and
5 minutes.
And 5 minutes wiped all his work away. But yeah, I mean, I met you through a mutual friend, Scott Yagelinski. I'm happy I've met you. You're a good dude.
Thanks.
I'm glad you have a very strong family around you. I'm always here for you if you ever need to talk or anything. It is sad that what's going on with your dad, but it could be a lot worse if a 3 or 4 more day visit that you didn't go to the hospital. We can be having a completely different conversation here. I did say when we were filming that this is a dream, this podcast, and I wanted to do it and talk to people, and it just goes to show, like, a lot of times people perceive someone else and say, oh, this guy is this, or this guy is that, or this woman is this, and that person's going through stuff, and that's a huge reason why I want to do what I want to do, and help people get that story out, and maybe teach people instead of looking at others and judging, because like we said, life is too short. You could literally, one of us right now could be having something horrible, because it happens quick. I mean, you said that thing grew in the matter of a week,
Yep.
So don't judge other people. Like, talk to them and let them get that out. And I do appreciate your time and sitting down with us and doing that. I will have every description I will have everything in the description of the video when it comes to where you can find Scotty and where you can find his books and upcoming stuff, and you can follow him on social media. So for the most part, unless you have anything else you wanted to ask, Nikolai?
No,
nothing.
Good.
Anything else you want to throw out there as a plug, or what going on?
Yeah, I just want to say that with my dad's second book, I want to put this out there because I do get asked it a lot when I put out the cover of it. It's called Christ Defeats Cancer 2: The Battle Continues, and a lot of people ask me, why is it called Christ Defeats Cancer 2 if Christ already defeated cancer? But there's the keyword right there. It says Christ defeated cancer, but it's called Christ Defeats Cancer. It's always a process. It's not there yet. He didn't defeat it yet, or it would be called Christ defeated cancer. He still has the tumor. We're still running all through it. So it's just a process. So it's not like he completely obliterated it, but our faith as a family and as Christians ourselves, like, we ended up overcoming the cancer. And one of the original working titles was Big C as in Christ meets Little C as in cancer. It was like, that was kind of a whole thing. But yeah, and just to let everybody know to keep a lookout for that. And I have like sound that's coming out, and I have a couple other projects in the works, but keep an eye on that. I'm also on iTunes. I just got approved by iTunes for some interviews with that I have with celebrities from the horror and slasher genre, and you can give me a follow on Facebook. It's facebook.com/McCoy author, and it'll all be in the comments.
I did try to go into that because I have not. Just something to think about. We'll talk about more off camera, but you might want to look at some other ways to put that out there, because if you're not an iPhone user, it's not very easy to listen to that.
That is true.
I do have some things I could show you after we get done.
I do know that with with the Windows computer, you can download iTunes.
You can, but then you need an iTunes account, and then you got to do this. It's a nightmare. I'll show you something cool when we get out of here. But this is pretty much gonna wrap up our episode 1 when it comes to doing interviews. So we are rolling here. We do have the 2 shows going. When it comes to MMA, obviously people have tuned into that. The reception has been amazing. We're doing really, really good with that. So 10-8 round is doing very well. We officially came up with the name of our Ben is shaking his head in disapproval, but I told you it wasn't gonna stick. So we were talking a little bit on the last episode about our pop culture show. That's gonna go a lot when it comes to the movies, music, TV. So that has an official name, and it's called Things That Were Not Cool in High School, which I think is a clever name. Yours truly came up with it, and it was voted upon by our panel. So that's coming out soon. And this Friday coming up, a live episode. We're probably going to go we'll probably shoot again for 7:30 start time. We're going to do a wrestling show. So if you and your father would like to tune in on Facebook, Absolutely. You can type in, and we'll do a lot of cool stuff. So we have a lot of good stuff going there. That's going to cover all wrestling. That does not have a title yet. Took long enough to get the last one. But yeah, stay tuned. All that stuff is coming. Actually, this Tuesday, we are shooting another interview with Eva McCoy, which as I call her mama, my grandmother. So we're going to sit down and talk to her and her upcoming birthday and everything that went on in her life. But once again, Scotty, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
It was a blast. Yep. First episode's done. And keep us updated when it comes to stuff. And like I said, follow Scotty on social media. Everything will be in the description. Right. And we'll have you on again soon. And you come talk to us. Hopefully your dad can walk through here one day and sit down and have a conversation with us. So that's our light at the end of the tunnel.
Definitely.
Stay positive, and thank you so much. And
also, Interview with Everyday People on Facebook. You definitely won't regret it.
Giving us a plug. I love it.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Thank you guys so much, and we are out.